Imagine you are a British pilot in the summer of 1940. You are flying the Supermarine Spitfire, the most beautiful aircraft ever built. You are the knight of the air. Suddenly, a shadow falls over you. Yellow nose, square wings. A Messerschmitt Bf 109E Emil is diving on your tail from the sun. Your instinct takes over. You slam the stick forward to dive and escape. It's a standard maneuver. Gravity pulls you up out of your seat, negative G-force, and then silence. Your engine cuts out. The propeller windmills. For 3 terrifying seconds, you are a glider. You are a sitting duck. Behind you, the German pilot doesn't have this problem. His engine roars smoothly. He follows your dive effortlessly. He pulls the trigger. This was the dirty little secret of the Battle of Britain. History tells us the Spitfire was the savior. Propaganda tells us it was superior to the clumsy German Messerschmitt. But ask the pilots who died because their engines choked on their own fuel, and they will tell you a different story. Today, we are going to strip away the patriotism, ignore the movies, and look at the cold, hard engineering. Spitfire versus Bf 109. Which machine was actually better? The answer is not what you think. To understand the machines, you have to understand the men who built them. The Spitfire was designed by R.J. Mitchell. He built racing seaplanes. He cared about curves, drag reduction, and aerodynamic perfection. The Spitfire was built like a sports car, handmade, beautiful, and expensive. The Bf 109 was designed by Willy Messerschmitt. He didn't care about beauty. He cared about production. He designed the 109 to be built cheap, built fast, and built to kill. It was angular, cramped, and ugly. The Spitfire was a rapier. The 109 was a jagged knife. But the biggest difference wasn't the wings. It was the heart. Let's go back to that engine cutout moment. Why did the Spitfire choke? The Rolls-Royce engine used a carburetor. It's basically a bowl of fuel with a float inside, like a toilet tank. When you fly straight, gravity pulls the fuel down. The engine drinks. But when you push the nose down, negative G, gravity reverses. The fuel floats up. It moves away from the intake. The engine starves. Cough, splutter, silence. The German Daimler-Benz engine, it used direct fuel injection. It didn't rely on gravity. It had high-pressure pumps that sprayed fuel directly into the cylinders. The Bf 109 could fly upside down, loop, bunt, and dive without missing a single beat. This gave the German pilots a massive tactical advantage. If a Spitfire was on your tail, you didn't turn. You just pushed the stick forward and bunted into a dive. The Spitfire pilot could not follow you. If he tried, his engine would die. He had to roll the plane upside down first, then pull back on the stick to maintain positive G. That maneuver took 2 seconds. In a dogfight, 2 seconds is the difference between life and death. So, round 1 goes to the Messerschmitt, purely on engine technology. Now, let's talk about the most common myth in aviation history. The Spitfire could outturn the 109. We've heard it 1,000 times. The Spitfire had those big, beautiful elliptical wings. It had a lower wing loading, therefore it could turn tighter. Well, yes, but also absolutely no. The Spitfire was an aerodynamic masterpiece, yes. But the 109 had a secret weapon hidden inside its wings: automatic leading-edge slats. Here is the physics. When a plane turns hard, the wing flies at a steep angle to the air. If that angle gets too steep, the air stops flowing smoothly. It becomes turbulent. The wing stalls. The plane flips over and falls. The Spitfire pilot had to be very careful. If he pulled too hard, the Spitfire would shudder and stall. But the Messerschmitt, When the German pilot pulled hard, these little slats on the front of the wing would automatically pop out. They forced the air to stick to the wing. They delayed the stall. This meant a skilled 109 pilot could fly his plane right at the edge of physics. He could pull the stick back into his stomach, ignoring the shuddering, trusting the slats to keep him in the air. At low speeds, in a gritty, dirty dogfight, a veteran in a 109 could hang on the prop and turn surprisingly tight, sometimes tighter than a scared rookie in a Spitfire. The Spitfire was easier to fly, but the 109 rewarded the expert. But winning a war isn't just about aerodynamics. It's about the human being sitting in the seat. And this is where the Messerschmitt was a nightmare. If you sit in a Spitfire, it feels like you're wearing a tailored suit. The controls are perfectly balanced. You can see everything. The Malcolm Hood canopy gave you 360 degrees vision. Now sit in a Bf 109. It is claustrophobic. The canopy is heavy, framed with thick steel bars that create blind spots. You can't see behind you. The cockpit is so narrow that your shoulders touch the sides. The control stick is heavy at high speeds. To roll the plane at 400 miles per hour, you need both hands and all your strength. The Spitfire pilot could fly with his fingertips. The German pilot had to wrestle his machine. Over a 1-hour patrol, this didn't matter. But over a 4-year war, the fatigue killed you. The 109 was designed for a quick knockout punch. The Spitfire was designed to keep the pilot alive to fight another day. If aerodynamics was a tie, then firepower was where the Germans changed the game. In 1940, the Spitfire Mark I was armed with 8.303 Browning machine guns. 8 guns. It sounds terrifying. It looked impressive on propaganda posters, but in reality, they were pea shooters. The .303 round is a rifle bullet. It's small. It relies on kinetic energy. To bring down a German bomber, you didn't just need to hit it, you needed to turn it into Swiss cheese. You had to hit the pilot, the fuel lines, or the engines. British pilots reported emptying their entire ammunition drums into a bomber only to watch it fly home, smoking but alive. The Messerschmitt Bf 109 took a different approach. It carried fewer guns, but it carried a nightmare. The 20mm cannon firing the Minengeschoß wine shell. This was a masterpiece of lethal engineering. Unlike standard bullets, which were solid metal, the German shell was hollow, thin-walled, and packed with high explosive. It didn't rely on impact. It relied on chemistry. When it hit an aircraft skin, it didn't just punch a hole, it detonated. Tests show that it took roughly 4,000 rounds from a Spitfire's machine guns to guarantee a bomber kill. For the Bf 109, it took 20 rounds. 3 or 4 hits on a fighter were usually enough to tear a wing off. The Spitfire sprayed lead. The Messerschmitt threw grenades. It wasn't until later in the war, when the Spitfire was upgraded with its own 20mm Hispano cannons, that the playing field was finally leveled. But in 1940, the German punch was undeniably harder. But the British had something the Germans didn't: the ability to improvise. Remember the engine cutout problem, the fatal flaw of the carburetor? While German engineers were designing complex fuel injection systems, a brilliant British female engineer named Beatrice Tilly Schilling looked at the problem and said, "Just put a washer in it." She designed a simple brass restrictor, a small metal ring that prevented the fuel from flooding the engine during negative Gs. It wasn't high-tech. It was a plumbing fix. But it worked. Suddenly, the Spitfire could dive. The gap was closing. The war didn't stand still. By 1942, the Bf 109 was getting old. Germany tried to upgrade it. They added bigger engines, bigger guns, heavier armor. The sleek Bf 109F became the Bf 109G Gustav. But there is a price for power. The 1009 got heavy. It got bulges all over the nose to fit the new equipment. Pilots called it the bulge. It became harder to handle, dangerous to land, and sluggish in a turn. The thoroughbred racehorse was becoming a workhorse. The Spitfire, however, aged like fine wine. The British fitted the massive Merlin 61 engine with a two-stage supercharger. The nose got longer, the propeller got to 4 blades. The Spitfire Mk9 was born. It kept its agility, but gained the speed and climb rate to match anything the Germans had. By 1944, the balance had shifted. The Bf 109K was a monster of an engine strapped to a 1935 airframe, shaking itself to pieces. The Spitfire was still the queen of the skies, smooth and deadly. So who won? If you look at the numbers, the Messerschmitt Bf 109 is the deadliest fighter in history. The top aces of the world flew the 109. Erich Hartmann shot down 352 planes in it. But numbers lie. Most of those kills were against inferior Soviet aircraft on the Eastern Front. The verdict is this: the Bf 109 was the better hunter. It was an offensive weapon, fast, heavily armed, designed to dive, kill, and vanish. It was a predator, but the Spitfire was the better fighter. It was a defensive shield. It was easier to fly, more forgiving for rookie pilots, and it could sustain a dogfight longer than its rival. In the end, the philosophy of the Spitfire won. Willy Messerschmitt designed a machine to kill. R.J. Mitchell designed a machine for the pilot. When the war turned into a marathon, the machine that didn't exhaust its pilot, the machine that could be upgraded without losing its soul, was the one that claimed the sky. The Bf 109 was a terrifying weapon, but the Spitfire? The Spitfire was a legend. Which one would you choose to fly into hell? The heavy hammer or the sharp sword? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to know why the Japanese Zero was even more fragile than both of these, click this video right here.